Welcome to talking about motivational flow. We're going to get into a topic that is one of my favorites when it comes to applying your motivation code and your motivational patterns to your work every day. But before we do that, let's talk a little about burnout, okay? What is burnout? We tend to think of burnout as exhaustion from too much work, but the reality is more nuanced. Burnout comes when the majority of the work we're doing is misaligned with our motivational patterns. I know that's a completely different definition than you think about, but as we go through this material and as you think about your life, you're going to discover that, yeah, that's actually pretty right on. See if this rings true for you. You can, for some things that you love, work all sorts of hours, nights, weekends, and not because a boss is telling you or not because there's a bonus on the line, just because you love the work you're doing and you never feel drained. And there's others that just spending 1 hour and you're like, I am exhausted. I need a vacation. The difference isn't skill set. It's alignment with motivation. So look at this list and tell me if you've ever experienced these symptoms of burnout. Let's walk through them. Persistent fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, decreased satisfaction and accomplishment, cynicism or detachment from activities, reduced performance despite working harder, and physical symptoms like headaches or sleep disturbances. If you look at that list and you checked off even one yes to one of those things, you go, oh, wow. This isn't good. I've known people that as they approach their desk, they start feeling pain. I've known people that as Sunday night comes on and they got to think about Monday, they're stressed. They have anxiety. You go, that's not the way life is supposed to be. Burnout isn't just overworking. It is consistently and constantly doing work that doesn't align with your top motivational patterns. You've all had a pebble in your shoe. Pebble in your shoe for a couple minutes, not a big deal. An hour, big deal. A day, oh boy. But if you had a pebble in your shoe for weeks on end, you're destroying your feet. That's just bad news. That's what burnout's like when you're not working in alignment with your motivational patterns. But here's the good news. You can prevent burnout. You have everything you need. If you have your M-Code report and you know yourself, you have everything that you need to be able to do this. So the first thing you have to do is look at what's on the what not to take on or the not to do list. Now, you can't decide that for every single activity. Some things you just get handed to and you have to do. But for everything that you're choosing to do, even when you get invited, that little tickle of your ear, the fancy that says, ooh, I'm being invited, I feel special. But the work itself is draining. You want to learn how to put things on your not to do list, just as much as you have a to-do list. Look for the items that drain you. Why? What's the deal there? Well, often the draining activities are tied to our lowest motivations. So when you start looking at your low motivations and you go, oh, yeah, that's why these things are making me feel exhausted, drained, frustrated. You see that your patience shrinks when activities are tied to those bottom ones. And you go, I know that these activities aren't helpful because these bottom ones are the things that don't light me up, right? If I stay in that zone for too long, I will face burnout. And you go, hey, I don't get to decide every activity. I understand that. But there are some things where you have choice, so you want to make sure that you're choosing against low motivated activities. And we'll talk about other ways to mitigate issues when you still have to do the work. That's changing the assignment. When you have to do the work, but the route you're taking to a particular destination is one that is not fulfilling and helpful, you can change the route. You're not changing the destination. So when I say change the assignment, I'm not saying that your boss tells you to write a memo and you're like, no, I'm going to shoot a video. Like if they ask you to do something, you got to do it. But how you do it is up to you. That's the same as driving to any destination. You have a route you take, but if there was an accident right in front of you, you would take an alternative route. And that's what we're talking about, is you can change the assignment, change how you approach the task, change how you modify your environment, change when you schedule it or who you do it with. All of that allows you to onboard yourself more powerfully. Why does this work? Because even if you can't choose every effort that you're involved in, you can make tweaks to make the dynamic better for you. And of course, the last one is embrace the things that bring you energy. Identify the activities that map to your top motivations And you will not only do those better, faster, stronger, but you will end that effort higher in energy than ever before, which is fantastic because it carries off into the next thing you're going to do. Why is that so powerful? Because it often puts us in the state of flow. And we're going to talk about motivational flow, which is a little different, but it allows us to engage when we work on our best stuff, things that motivate us the most. We bring all that energy, we get in that state of flow where suddenly we're like, time passed and I wasn't even paying attention. Now imagine if the joy and excitement of working in that environment was more than for 20 minutes in a day or more than an hour a day. Imagine that most of your day was that way. That would be fantastic. So this is the M code stacked rank of 32 different motivations, and this articulates the motivational patterns. And when you look at this, the stuff in the green, the stuff at the top, is the stuff that brings you energy. Stuff in the yellow gives you some energy, that's fine. The stuff in the red doesn't wake you up in the morning. Doesn't mean you're bad at it. It just doesn't get you up. It doesn't say, yes, I want to go do it. And sometimes the things that are in that bottom list are the ones that drain you the most. So now we're going to talk about motivational flow. You've heard me say it a couple times, but you're probably going, hey, what is motivational flow? And what I want to do is connect that motivational flow to the burnout we were just talking about. Motivational flow at its best allows you to mitigate the things that drain you, the things that cause you to walk towards burnout, and instead gives you a path towards that high energy, enjoyable, and satisfied work. So let's talk about motivational flow. Your ability to onboard yourself. That's what we're talking about, and onboarding your best self. When you understand your motivational flow, you understand the switch that you have to just turn yourself on and be fully ready to go. So motivational flow is the pattern or sequence of motivations that help you, 1, get excited about starting something, 2, stay engaged through the process, and 3, feel deeply satisfied when it's done. The 3 components are what we call prompt, process, and payoff. Prompt is your boss walks in and says, here are 10 ideas of what you could work on next. They don't care which one you pick, but you will regularly pick 1 or 2 that align with what excites you, what gets you going. That's your prompt, is the, ooh, I liked these 2 because they offered me something, because they engaged something, because I saw in them some potential, something that attracted me. And if you don't know what prompts you or what pulls you into work, it's important to know so that you understand yourself better and you know, okay, how do I put this into my day-to-day work? So prompt taps you into the motivations that get you started. Then we have process. If your project is 12 minutes long, you're not going to worry too much about process. If it's a day long, maybe you'll look at process some. If it's 2, 3, 5 days, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 2 months, then process is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. You're going to be doing stuff. And in that space, while you're working the effort, while you're doing the project, how do you get yourself energized, fueled, excited about doing the work? That's the process. Often, the process also is defined by how you're not doing it. Meaning, you look at the bottom motivations and you go, okay, as long as I don't have to do it that way, I'll be okay. Because if I do it that way, I'm going to be drained. And then you have payoff. And payoff is, why did I get involved to begin with, right? What did I hope would happen at the end? Often you'll see that some people have the same motivation in their prompt as in their payoff because they're saying, yeah, that's why I got started. And also, that's what I want to see finished. But you don't have to have that double. You can say, ooh, I got excited because of this. And when I'm in the last mile of a project, I get excited because I can see the end is in sight and I know what's about to happen. So when you look at your top motivations, you can look for the candidates, the motivations that might fit in prompt, in process, and payoff. Let me show you a way to answer 3 quick questions or 3 fill in the blanks that'll help you get there. So as you reflect, I want you to take this sentence. I don't usually get involved unless I can blank. That's the tip to your prompt. That's the, oh my gosh, you're right. If I can do this, then I'm excited about it. If I can't do this, then I'm not excited about it. Okay, look at those top 10, 12 motivations and fill in the blank here. And you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. When you get to the next one, I love getting to blank. I love getting to take charge. I love getting to comprehend and express. I love getting to master some material. When you fill in that blank, you're talking about this is the way I like to do the work. And then the win for me is, and fill in that blank, and that gives you your payoff. What's the whole point of what it is you're doing? I like to do stuff, right? I like to get things done. And in order to do that well, I filled out these exact prompts. So this is my motivational flow pattern. Prompt. I likely won't get involved unless I can make an impact, realize a vision, maximize results, be unique. In my process, I love taking charge and I want to demonstrate learning with a chance to excel. If the work requires doing it right or meeting requirements, it's probably not something I'm interested in. And in the payoff, the win for me is making an impact, being key, and realizing the vision. Now, this is a motivational pattern. It's not a motivational statement. A motivational statement, now that I've pulled these things together, and you noticed I used several motivations for each prompt. But as I pulled this together, it now lets me pick and choose one from each to create a motivational flow statement. And often what we invite people to do is you can write multiple statements, right? Mix and match between these. But when you write these statements, write them on a little Post-it note, stick it on your monitor. And so as the middle of your doing work, you just look at it to remind yourself, hey, this is how I onboard my best self. So imagine if you said, I choose projects to make an impact. I do it by excelling. And the win for me is realizing the vision. If I have a statement like that and I put it up on my monitor, then when I'm doing work and I go, oh, that's right, it's all about realizing the vision. Well, then I can start going, well, okay, I'm getting close to the end. What's left? What do I have to do to make that work? The reality is all motivations matter. There's not a right answer. There's not a wrong answer. What happens is you want to look at what are the positive things that fit into your effort, but you also want to look at the bottom things that detract from your effort, that drain you. So you can have positive statements, but you can also have negative statements. For me, when something is too routine and you're just doing it over and over and over again, that will burn me out very quickly. So even though that's a negative statement, I look at my bottom list and I go, okay, if the work is in this space, if the process, the middle piece, the process is, do it right, which is procedural and process and over, and I go, that's not a job I want to do. All right, so I want to wrap up by giving you 3 examples of motivational flow in action. First, I want to tell you about Jessica. I love Jessica. She was an amazing employee of mine years ago. You can see on the left here, her prompt, process, and payoff. What I love about it is she was doing a job that was writing release notes. And release notes are not very entertaining, engaging. When you write software and you release a new version of software, it comes with a set of notes. It is, in my world and in many people's worlds, it is not a job or effort that you think is like, that's so powerful. But Jessica rewired the entire effort and made it one of the most powerful. She literally said, okay, you know what? I'm going to take my make an impact and I'm going to take my identify potential. I'm going to take my comprehend and express. I'm going to put it together. And she started working with the QA people and the development people. And she started figuring out what were the patterns that were coming out of the release notes over years so that she could then predict where we were going next and what we ought to look at. And it was incredible. And she was fully energized because she rewired her whole job based on her motivational flow. Then you get Ryan. Ryan worked for me and hated meetings. He hated meetings, but because he was doing meetings the way someone else, his old boss had done them. And he's like, this doesn't do anything for me, right? His old boss had daily meetings. And so he was like, I'm doing the daily meetings, but this is just a waste of everyone's time. And so he sat down and said, I need to think about a new way to structure the meeting, to make the meeting energetic. And so he did. And you see it here. He was like, okay, let's connect every single meeting to something bigger. What's the big picture? And so every meeting and every conversation was tied to the big picture. And then he was looking for ways for people to collaborate. So most of the meeting would be like, why don't you work with you? And why don't you do this with you? And as he was doing that, he was like, okay, this is way more powerful. And then because his payoff was make an impact, every single time he would have a meeting, he would talk about, hey, the stuff we're going to talk about, how are we going to know that it's made an impact? So he tied it to that, not just for himself, but for everyone else, making those meetings way more energetic and way more powerful. And then, of course, there's Steve, one of my favorite guys, works on our team right now. We call Steve the glue. He connects all sorts of stuff, process stuff, people stuff, project stuff. Steve is glue. But when you look at his motivations, his prompt, realize a vision and make an impact. His process, meet needs and collaborate, and payoff, make an impact, maximize, and improve. I mean, when you read this, you just go, oh my gosh, that's why he's the glue. Because he's like, hey, I want to make sure that everybody's needs are getting met. I want to make sure I can help people collaborate, but I'm doing it to make an impact. I'm doing it to get maximum results. And I always am trying to improve. 3 different stories of how people use motivational flow to onboard their best self. And the impact? Motivational alignment. Your energy becomes renewable rather than having it depleted. That's huge. Your productivity increases naturally. Your satisfaction and fulfillment also deepen. What else? Your resilience, your ability to get through hard things actually improves. And because this is unique to you, your authenticity shines. So, what's your next step? Look at your M code to identify your top motivations and how you would put that into motivational flow statements. If you haven't taken the M code yet, I strongly recommend heading over to motivationcode.com and doing that. Once you've gotten your report and you're taking a look, map out your prompt, process, and payoff. Start generically with fill in the blanks with lots of motivations and then narrow it down into motivational flow statements that you can use. Then, as you're working day to day and you see an effort that is draining you, use your motivational flow statement to reframe that activity so it's not as draining. And lastly, take a look week after week. At the end of a week, take a look back and see what are the things that energize me and what are the things that drain me, and how can I rethink my next week using motivational flow. Thanks.